Howdy, howdy. 10-9, continuation of the biome stuff. As we were talking about with the biomes, that they have lots of different plants and animals that can be found there. But what we see when we look at these biomes is a culmination of thousands upon thousands of years of plants and animals that are growing and moving into the area and adapting to their environment. But it doesn't happen like that way overnight. What we get is something called succession. Succession is a series of predictable changes that occur in a community over time. So the desert didn't start out that way. The tropical forest didn't start out that way. It started out in a very predictable series of growth. So here is just a, we'll say, North America type biome. It starts out with little annuals. Annuals are things that pop up once, and then they grow, they do their thing, and then they die. So they only come out for 1 year. So annual, 1 year. And then, I got a butterfly in my backyard. Yay. So we have these annual plants. So we always start out with little plants and grasses and things like that. And then after a little bit, then we get into what are called perennials. Perennials means year-round. So these may die back in the winter, but they'll come back in the spring. And then from there, then that makes room for these shrubs and bigger things to grow, and then bigger trees, and then we get the full-on forest. And so this idea that no matter what biome you go to, they have all gone through these steps to get where they are now is called succession. Okay, we're going to talk about a couple of different kinds of succession. The first one is called primary succession. Primary means first. So in an area where there has been no land at all, such as, say, in Hawaii, a volcanic island popped up out of the sea, and it's nothing but this type of rock right here. Or say there's a glacier that is melting and underneath it is exposing brand new rock. What ends up happening is that there's no life there. But it's not going to be like that forever. Eventually, life is going to take over. But how? If there's rock, how do I turn rock into a forest? Well, primary succession takes over. So here's what happens. We get these little things called pioneer species. Now, just like the pioneers of the olden days, they went out and explored in new uninhabited areas. Well, that's what happens here, is we get these organisms, usually smaller plants, that get to the area, either carried as seed by wind or water, and they land on the rock. Now, it's kind of hard to grow a seed on a rock. So we need these guys first. These guys right here are called lichens. A lichen is kind of a, well, you've seen it before. I'll show you guys some. But they look like green flat things that have been pressed against either rocks or plants. And it's actually two creatures living together. It's a fungus and an algae. And they're living together symbiotically. Mutualism. Okay. And so what they're doing is they're living together and they're secreting an acid that actually takes this rock right here and dissolves it into almost like a sand-like material. And that sand, again, can't really grow seeds on sand. They need some nutrients or organic material. So when the lichen dies and decomposes, because bacteria are everywhere, the dead organic material from the lichens mixes with the sand, and that makes soil, dirt. Now I can plant stuff. And so what ends up happening is that once the lichens get in here and start breaking down rock, they create soil. That makes room for the pioneer species to come on in and start to grow. But I'm not going to get a big old redwood tree growing out of this. I got to start small. So the pioneer species are usually the small, teeny tiny guys. They're little grasses, little bitty, weeds and things like that. And then eventually it'll start to make room for bigger things and bigger things until we get the full-on forest. Now, secondary succession, we see that a lot around here. Secondary succession is what happens when there used to be a habitat there and it's died due to either a flood has wiped out all the plants, fire, humans have wiped it out due to making room for clear-cutting forests or something like that. And then what happens in this case is all the plants are gone. This picture, you can see all the trees back here have been killed by a forest fire. But look at all the stuff growing down below here. It occurred way, way quicker than primary succession, because primary succession, there was nothing. No dirt, no soil, no nutrients, nothing. Here, there used to be an area. There used to be plants, so there's tons of nutrients in the soil already. All you got to do is just wait for a couple of seeds to drop and start growing. So secondary succession is much, much quicker because it occurs where habitat used to exist and will start the process much quicker and end up at the final community much quicker. That final one, I'm writing this because I don't think I put it on the slide, is called a climax community. So a climax community is the end product. So if I want a tropical forest that's just been clear cutted and it's starting to regrow, and there's just a little plants maybe 3-4 feet tall, I know I'm not done yet. So it's in the middle of progression of succession. But if I go back and I've got trees hundreds of feet up high in the sky, and I've got monkeys living in the trees, I know that I've reached my climax community. And it's probably not going to change anymore. Once it's there, it's good, it's done. All right, let's see, what's next? Oh yeah, this doesn't only occur just on land, it also occurs underwater too. Now you're thinking plants don't really grow underwater. You're correct. Well, algae, but they're really not a plant. They're like seaweed. That's a fungus kind of thing. But anyway, succession does occur under the ocean as well. We call this marine succession. Every once in a while, something amazing happens. Well, not amazing for the whale, but a whale dies. And that whale will either bloat and float to the surface, or it'll sink down to the bottom. When it sinks down to the bottom, here's what happens, is all these animals start jumping in on the whale, and they're like, oh my God, look at all this food. And they start working their way and picking through the whale until there's nothing left but bones. And it does the same exact progression. You don't start out with the big animals coming down. It always starts with a certain set, kind of like the pioneer species. The first thing that shows up on the dead whale are very specific types of animals. And then they eat their fill, and then they go away. And then the next set of animals come in, and they do their thing, and they go. Until eventually all we're left with is this whale bone and things that can break down the bone. So they don't show up when the whale's like this, that was supposed to be a circle, because they can't do anything yet. They have to wait until the whale is bona fide, and then they can get in there. So it's kind of crazy that succession occurs under the ocean in whales too. If you YouTube this and look up they call it whale fall. This marine succession, they call it whale fall. If you YouTube this, you can actually see video taken of the middle of this going on and all the crazy creatures that live in and on it. Sea stars love it, hagfish love it, tasty, tasty stuff. All right, that is about it for this one. Not a big one. After that last one, I think you deserve something a tad smaller. All right, let's see. Okay, thanks guys. Bye-bye.